out. And my wife had to go to the house. From my house, and I don't know what the White House is.
Yeah, like a shore amusement park. Well, it's short, so everything's not as good as the rest of the world.
Sorry,
I'm from New England. I just like to make fun of I like to. No, I'm from. I live in Spotswood now. I'm from New England. No, we couldn't have a kid for me. I proposed. No. So I proposed to my girlfriend to keep it.
There he is.
Yeah. No, I love it.
I have nowhere to go. It starts at my house. No, it starts at my house.
Whenever they talk about like North Central and South, shore is like its own region. It's like it always gets because there's not really part of South over.
I don't know. Here's my main thing. How are you, buddy?
Let me have the bomb.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to thank you all for coming out on such a beautiful day in Keansburg. It's my pleasure to introduce Governor Chris Christie today.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm pleased to be back in Keansburg to mark the beginning of the week where we will commemorate the 5th anniversary of Superstorm Sandy and recognize the achievements of New Jersey's Blue Acres program, a major component of our strategic response for recovery and rebuilding to make New Jersey more resilient for future storms. I want to thank Commissioner Bob Martin, who is here, the Commissioner of the DEP who has run this program. The response has included elevating homes in flood-prone areas, rebuilding our energy infrastructure and our water and wastewater infrastructure with more resiliency, working with shore towns on their long-term planning to protect themselves against future storms, obviously working with the Army Corps of Engineers to develop a comprehensive coastal protection system that addresses the specific challenges and needs of each region, and then, of course, the Blue Acres program. In the aftermath of Sandy, I asked Commissioner Martin and his team at DEP to lead the effort to buy homes from impacted homeowners at pre-storm value to get people and property out of harm's way. Having met with so many homeowners who saw their homes flooded and their lives upended, not just during Sandy, but repeatedly before that, I fully comprehend that these families lived with worry every time it rained, and the need to help them transition to a more solid future was part of the opportunity that Sandy presented to us. And it's the Blue Acres program that continues to help people like these, not just in Sandy-hit areas, but across our state in 14 different municipalities. Some of the mayors of those towns are with us today to mark the achievement, and I thank them for being here. I see Kennedy O'Brien in particular. In these Sandy-impacted towns, Blue Acres has now made more than 900 buyout offers to homeowners to buy repetitively flooded homes. 475 of those homes have already been purchased and demolished, leaving undeveloped areas that help mitigate flooding to further protect those threatened in these communities. In addition, Blue Acres has helped dozens of homeowners who could not afford to move negotiate short sales or payoff approvals with lenders, enabling even more families to move out of harm's way. These accomplishments have not only been appreciated by the homeowners in the towns, but also been recognized by our federal partners. Over the past 5 years, the success of New Jersey's Blue Acres program has earned national recognition, including awards from both FEMA and from HUD. Funding for Blue Acres buyouts, which now total $300 million since Sandy, comes to us from FEMA, HUD, as well as through some state funds as well. While much of this funding has already been obligated, the need to help homeowners escape the threat of repeated flooding and the personal and the financial devastation that causes still exists in many communities. So for this reason, I'm pleased to announce our administration is expanding the program by committing an additional $75 million of federal funding available to us to the Blue Acres program. In financial terms, this extra infusion of money will help Blue Acres acquire and remove hundreds more at-risk homes from places like here in Keansburg and from other municipalities around the state. And what it means for the homeowners will be to get a fair price for their home, to be able to move on to purchase another home in an area that's not repetitively flooded, and to give them peace of mind when they move into that home, that they will not be dealt with the same type of bad hand that happens when flooding comes. I want to thank again Commissioner Martin and the members of his team that have done this. 5 years after Sandy, we recognize more remains to be done to protect vulnerable communities, and that's why we're expanding Blue Acres. Around me, you see additional houses with additional homeowners who still need our help and our diligence. To those people, we'll continue to expand these programs. We'll continue to fight to make this work for all of you. In the end, we're getting recognition now from a number of different spots, including the rating agencies, that the recovery from Sandy after 5 years in our shore counties is complete. Now, that doesn't mean that every family's back in their home. But what it does mean is that we started with 365,000 homes that were damaged, and we're now at about 1,000 homes that still need to be handled and get families back in. If you compare that to the recovery that went on post-Katrina in Louisiana and Mississippi, or you compare it even to what's happening across the Hudson River in New York, and we'll be talking more about these statistics as the week goes on, New Jersey has outpaced each one of those significantly. And this Blue Acres program is one that, as the mayor knows, is about resiliency going forward. He and his folks are going to be the first ones to get the call when there's flooding and people can't survive. This way, if we get these homes purchased, give those people a new start, and also create more open space in some of these towns, that'll help significantly to make the towns more livable and more pleasant, and will help the folks who otherwise have been damaged by some of the storms that we've had. So I want to thank the mayor for his hospitality, as always, when I come to Keansburg, the other mayors who are here as well. Happy to take a few questions, maybe on topic, but if not, I'll take other ones as well. Any questions? Yeah.
When I spoke to the mayor earlier, he indicated what other mayors have said. You participate in this program, it also means that these properties come off the tax rolls and it creates a financial ripple effect. Any thoughts on that?
Listen, it's you got to pick and choose. I mean, would you rather have that, or would you rather have people continuing to have their lives and their homes and their resources destroyed? How many times can people go through that? And so, take some of them off the rolls. But on the other hand, the fact is, these folks, need this help. And I don't think that any mayor would responsibly want people who are miserable and having their belongings destroyed repeatedly become a captive to property tax base. That's not what we should be worrying about first and foremost. Any other questions?
How difficult is it, this process for families to go through this and who decides market value?
Well, we get appraisers that come in and give independent market value. Secondly, it's a totally voluntary program. So we don't come in and say, hey, you're in a repetitively flooded area, you must sell your home. This is the choice of the homeowner. They get to decide. And they go through what would be a normal process of selling a house, except the state is the buyer rather than an individual. And so the state comes, we get an appraisal, we then try to agree on price, we make an offer. There's usually a little negotiation that goes on, and then we either come to a conclusion or we don't. Now, some families have decided that the price that's offered is not good enough and they want to stay. Totally their call. But more often than not, what we're finding is people accept the offers, consider them fair, and are able to roll that money into a new home. Remember this too, a lot of these homes, a number of them, were underwater not only literally, but also financially. And the state stepped in and negotiated with the lenders to give them a break. And get the lenders to accept some of the risk here as well. So the state's been better than an average buyer. We've been a buyer that also comes in and works with these lenders and says, if these folks are underwater on their mortgage, you got to help them out here. We got to get them rolling into a new home and not worried about making up for past mistakes. So it's been, I think, as with anything, they're dealing with the government, though, so, it's not always a joyous process, but I think it's been a much easier process than people would have anticipated.
And are you guys still dealing with people along the coast who don't want to reside this coast?
That's all done. We now have every easement we need. And after 5 years of fighting mostly just with Bayhead, Maniloking, Point Pleasant, and Margate, Really, those have been the only municipalities who have really fought it. The rest of them have been really very cooperative, and that's why most of the project is done. We're doing some amendments to the project in Margate to deal with some of the pooling issues that we had down there, which is also, by the way, going to help Margate's internal flooding on their streets, which they had never dealt with before and hadn't made the investment. The investment we'll make with the federal government now will help Margate in terms of not only beach pooling, but also the flooding on their streets. And now the last part of this project to be done, which I believe will be done before next hurricane season, is the Northern Ocean County part, which includes Point Pleasant, Bayhead, Maniloking, Ortley, Toms River, that area. That will be done, I think, before next hurricane season. So we don't have to worry about that anymore then. We've got a system that is provably working and sustainable over time by both the state and federal government. Yeah.
Off-topic
Sure.
question. Lieutenant Governor just said that she would support legislation to ban sanctuary cities in the state and hold any sort of funding from them. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, listen, I've always agreed with that. I think the fact is that most of what we're talking about here are federal laws and not state laws. But I think people are responding to the fact that they don't want us to be a sanctuary state. And they don't want, and I think the Lieutenant Governor's right, they don't want people that law enforcement is ordered to willfully ignore. There's no other group of people in this state that law enforcement is told you must willfully ignore them. You cannot know whether they're lawbreakers or not. You can't ask them. And that's why this race is getting closer and closer, and why Phil Murphy is nervous. Because he actually, told the truth. That he wants to turn New Jersey into a place where law enforcement has hands tied behind their back. And that's not, in my view, the way it should be. So, I don't know the specifics of what she's talking about, but in general, I agree with that.
Do you have a favorite fruit and vegetable?
Yeah, well, what was it? Tomatoes and cranberries? Yeah, I'll go with the Lieutenant Governor. It depends on whether you consider tomatoes a fruit or a vegetable, which is also a debate as well. I think the Lieutenant Governor characterized it as a vegetable. Some people say it's a fruit. It comes from a vine. It's debatable. I also like the blueberries. We got great blueberries here as well, so, yeah. Jersey corn is pretty good, too, yeah.
The Wakers going to stay focused on the river communities, or is it going to try to go to more of the bayfront and oceanside communities?
Well, I think we're going to try to remain in both. Another $75 million will allow us to do that, I think. And in the end, what we've tried to do is go to willing communities, right? So some communities just don't want it. The homeowners don't want it. We're not forcing ourselves into unwilling communities. What we want to do is to come to places where people are suffering and think this is a viable alternative for them. And so the Bayfront communities have always been a focus, and we've spent time in Union Beach as well, and other towns around, this area, and the river communities will be dealt with also. But the initial focus, obviously, was Sandy-related communities, and we've been able to expand beyond that to deal with some of the other flooding that's happened in other places that are more river-based rather than Bay or ocean. I'll get to you in a second. Yeah.
So it seems as though Kim Guadagno and Phil Murphy have been kind of going to the right and to the left in recent weeks. So we've seen the Lieutenant Governor talking more about sanctuary cities and immigrants, maybe just violent criminals, for some of them, and Phil Murphy saying $200 million free community college for all, kind of like a standard.
Or $400 million, or $600 million, or $800 million, whatever his math of the day is.
And so, in this, in New Jersey, a state where it's fairly, in the middle. I mean, do you have any idea why we might be seeing this? And is that a smart tactic, or?
Well, I'm not a political pundit, so I'm not going to comment on tactics. I would just say to you that, first off, I don't see what the Lieutenant Governor is doing is going to the right. And as far as the whole debate about sanctuary state, that was raised by Ambassador Murphy. I mean, it wasn't something that the Lieutenant Governor brought up, and it wasn't part of her campaign, but she felt it necessary to respond to him when in the first debate, I think, and he'd said it before, but he highlighted in the first debate that sanctuary cities aren't good enough. He wants us to be a sanctuary state where there's no enforcement of immigration laws at all. I mean, that's kind of an amazing statement. So I think what you see the Lieutenant Governor doing is reacting to what her opponent has said. And I don't think Phil Murphy has gone left. I don't think he could be any more left. I mean, I think we've got a guy here who has said he wants to raise taxes, increase the size of government, set up new government agencies for illegal immigrants. He wants to legalize marijuana. I mean, I don't know, free college tuition at community colleges. Can you go, I mean, what's left on the left? I mean, what's left for him to say? Like, just admit he's a socialist? I mean, I don't know. So I don't think the movement you're talking about, I think it's in reaction from the lieutenant governor, in reaction to what Mr. Murphy is saying. And I will tell you this, I don't think you've seen a more liberal, out-of-touch candidate in my recent memory in New Jersey as a major party candidate. You remember, go back and look at John Corsine's ad in 2005, his ads in 2005. This is a guy who was talking about how he was going to cut taxes for the middle class, and that he was a businessman who knew how to bring common sense to running government. He wasn't talking about all this wild left-wing stuff. Phil Murphy's a true believer. The people of the state of New Jersey should take his word for it and be careful about, how they vote in 2 weeks. I think he's just being himself. Yes. You back?
Yes. You mentioned earlier that New Jersey had outpaced the recovery of Katrina and I think you maybe mentioned
Katrina in Louisiana, Mississippi, and so far in New York as well.
Right.
To Sandy.
What do you account for the difference in New Jersey versus there? Why do you think New Jersey was?
It's hard for me to tell because I haven't gotten in depth in terms of how they were different, but I will just tell you that we were very, very aggressive right from the beginning. I think we had an extraordinary group of people running these operations right from the start, and I don't, and not that we didn't make mistakes, we did. We made some mistakes in the beginning that, we learned from and we corrected. And so, you've got lots of people who sit on the sidelines who's never done anything like this, who all are geniuses. I would have loved to have had those geniuses in the room and see how they would have reacted when they got the news we got on October 30th, the morning after Sandy, about the level of destruction in the state. I just think we took a very organized, relentless approach. For the first 2 years after Sandy, I had weekly Sandy meetings, weekly, for 2 years. I mean, so we put a lot of focus on this and a lot of attention, and the cabinet officers did an extraordinary job, as did the Governor's Office of Recovery and Rebuilding. Again, not to say there weren't mistakes, there always going to be, but, the fact that you'll see today that, the rating agencies are now saying that the shore counties have completely recovered economically within 5 years. Go look at what they said about New Orleans within 5 years. Go and look at what they said about Biloxi in 5 years. It's a much different circumstance. And, our areas were so dependent upon tourism in those areas that if you're not recovered, people aren't going to come. So that and, I've gone back to watching the Stronger Than the Storm ads this week. They're pretty good. And they got the message across. And I think all those things were important.
What's a mistake? What would you do?
Oh, well, listen, we hired the wrong firm to run the REM program in the beginning. And they turned out not to be up to it. So we had to fire them and we had to get a new firm in. We got the new firm in, they did a better job. I mean, so there were certain hiring decisions we made that were wrong. And this is the first time we were ever doing something like this. So we learned. I think also we made some really right decisions. There was a lot of tumult at the time that was mostly politically generated about Ashbridge, the debris recovery firm that we hired. Turns out that Ashbridge did it much faster than who New York hired at a much cheaper price. We haven't seen the follow-up stories to that. We just remember the hearings. And Senator Buono, who I guess had some ulterior motive at the time, to try to make those charges. So that turned out to be a great decision, and I'm sure that, others wish they would have made the same choice that we did. So, you make good ones and you make bad ones. The key is, when you make a bad decision and you have evidence that it's not working, change it. And not be afraid to change it, and we haven't been afraid to change those things that we thought we could improve.
There was a story in the Washington Post today that said Congressman Kennedy has quoted you as saying that if President Trump doesn't recognize the opioid issue, that his presidency is essentially over. Do you remember saying that, or is that mischaracterized?
That's mischaracterized. I haven't seen the story yet, but if the quote as you're giving it to me is accurate, no. Listen, what I've said is that recognizing this crisis is enormously important. I mean, let's face it. We have 142 people dying a day. If a terrorist organization were killing 142 Americans a day, what kind of money would we spend to stop it? All I know is that the president understands this. I've spoken to the president about it, and I don't know what Patrick is talking about, but that may be Patrick talking and wishing that I'd said it and Patrick wanted to say it, but it sounds better if he makes it come out of my mouth than his. But let me be really clear. The president gets this. I know he does. I've spoken to him about it more times than I can count. He understands this problem. He understands this issue. Now, there have been some in the administration who have needed to be brought along on it. That's okay. That's part of what government's all about. But, I think the president has done good things so far, and I think there are great things from him to come on this issue.
And then there's the GQ story where it said you don't see yourself running for office again.
Yeah, well, I've said that a million times before.
Does that mean no Christie 2024 for president campaign?
2024?
I know, it's a long time away, but it's...
I mean, seriously, you got to be kidding me. I mean, 2024, I hope I'm alive in 2024. Then I'll decide what I'm going to be doing for work. I mean, this is like, I'm sure that was no revelation to any of you. I've said that any number of times before. I mean, so, is it news when someone else prints it? I mean, I don't think it makes it any more newsworthy because it's in GQ. I mean, I think the fact that I'm in GQ in any form or fashion is a little bit ridiculous, but nonetheless, I've said the one job that I really wanted, I have, and got it twice. The other job that I really wanted, I ran for and lost. And I don't see myself running for president again. No, I don't. God knows what life brings you, but that's, I've said, and, I know you guys don't believe me, but I've continued to say over and over again that absent something extraordinary being offered to me in government service, which I don't anticipate, I've turned down, they got it wrong in that story. I never was offered Secretary of Commerce or Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Never. I don't know where they got it from. I told them at the time they were wrong, and they printed it anyway, which is kind of what annoys guys like us. Like, I admitted that I'd been offered a number of other things, and I've turned them down. And the reason I've turned them down is because I wanted to finish my job here. The only way I would have left here was to be president or vice president. And I wasn't leaving otherwise. And so I know you guys have refused to believe that, and I've told you any number of times that absent something that I don't anticipate, I'm going to the private sector.
Next job is gone for managers.
Yeah, I was never thinking the manager thing was my gig. No, but Mickey Callaway, we're hoping for the best. But I'm going to the private sector after this is over, and we'll see what I do there. But, and I'll continue to work on the opioid issue even after I leave office, because it's been important to me for 8 years. And I think the one thing that the GQ story today did reflect accurately was that this has been something that I've been working on since the mid-90s. And so this is something that I really care about. And the problem is that people across this state and across this country are suffering. And not enough people are paying attention to it, in my view. We had the AIDS crisis during the 80s, and there were marches everywhere. Where are the marches for this? More people died last year, 64,000, than ever died at the height of the AIDS crisis. We need focus on this, and I believe the president's going to bring that focus. And when he does, I think you're not going to see demonstrable results in the first year, but I think over time you'll see demonstrable results, which will be good for the people of the state and of the country. And that's why I'm involved in it.
Can I digress back to the just for a second?
I really wish you would.
The homes that would be that would qualify for this, do they have to be in designated floodplains? Because there are some families who feel like they should qualify, but would not qualify because the state is not designated.
We're open to discussing it with people. We need evidence of repetitive flooding is what we need. And so DEP's been willing to work with those folks. There's no restrictions in that regard. They're not that strict that they must be in a certain area. No. We go into a town and we work with the local officials and we see where there's been repetitive flooding, and then we approach those homeowners. And like I said, and then it's totally voluntary on the homeowner's part. Whatever they decide they're willing or unwilling to do, it's totally up to them. And so that's the way we do it. But no, that's not. They do not need to be in any designated area.
But obviously, the state thought this was really important because you went to the federal government, got $75 million more. How critical is this?
It's incredibly important to the people who live in these homes. You know, they bought a home, most of them not knowing that they were going to be repetitively flooded. They wind up suffering from that. And what people forget is it's not just repairing your home. It's that people lose precious belongings in those floods as well that they can't replace. So it's not just, oh, I need new, drywall and I, need new siding on my house or I need new carpeting. No, it's like the photo albums are gone. The videos of the kids growing up are gone. The high school yearbook is gone. I mean, these are things that you can't, in most instances, replace. And they're memories and part of your life that you won't be able to pass on. And so it's really important. And I understand the question about property tax base, but in the end, the towns I think are going to be better off with more open space and more of an ability to sustain a flood than they would otherwise. I think having to choose between the two, I think they're making the right choice. Yeah.
Back to you were talking about working on the opioid crisis after you leave office. Do you have any idea at this point what kind of form that could take? Are you starting a nonprofit?
I don't. I mean, I'm starting to play around with the ideas on that and talking to some folks about it. And I think we'll have a lot of different opportunities and possibilities to set something like that up or some other platform to use to be able to continue to work on it. But I think I know as much as almost anybody from a elected governmental perspective about this issue, and so I want to continue to be helpful. And the issue means a lot to me, so we'll figure out a way. Again, as with most things, I'm not 100% focused on what's next yet because I have too much to do every day. I mean, this job just doesn't permit you to totally check out. You just can't. So, you got to keep doing this job, and then, I told you, Mary Pat's giving me 2 weeks. So by February 1st, I have to be doing something. Or you've never lived with me. That may be too much time. Her having me home for 2 weeks for lunch would probably not be optimal for our 31-year marriage. So she's giving me 2 weeks, but it's 2 solid weeks. I mean, 2 solid weeks so I can do whatever I want. And then she says I got to get back to work. So we'll find something pretty quick, I hope, to keep me busy. Anything else? All right. Well, I want to thank the mayor. Again, I want to thank the DEP. This has been one of those programs where you've heard no complaints about it. And that's a pretty extraordinary accomplishment in all the different moving parts that are here. And Bob and his team deserve great credit for that. And when you think about over 900 homeowners in the state now having the option to walk away from a repetitively flooded home, that's a really important thing to those 900 families. And I'm glad that we've been able to help with this additional $75 million. We'll be able to help even more of them. And I'm gratified by the fact that the efforts of the Governor's Office of Recovery and Rebuilding and all these folks are being recognized now outside in connection with the 5-year anniversary to say that, despite some of the naysayers, and there always will be some, this recovery has been pretty extraordinary. And we've worked very hard at it. And as I've said to many people, 8 years as governor, it's the thing that I'm most proud of. You're tested in times of crisis, and how you respond and react to it, I think, is the way ultimately, in the long haul, you're judged as a leader. So we're happy about that. We're going to continue to work at it with all the days that we have left, and we'll pass it off a much stronger, much more resilient, much more prepared New Jersey to the next governor than was passed off to me in 2009, and that's a good thing. So thank you all very much for coming. Appreciate it.
Working on all this?
Nice to meet you.
Have a good day, guys.